Day two. Again, thank you for our host. Thank you. Welcome everyone to Leiden to day two. So as we talked about yesterday, um, the focus of Allotrope now in this general period of Allotrope where we've hopefully gotten the technology where we need it to be and we're looking to have impact. We talked about some of these areas yesterday and hopefully in reflection, you see, we talked on certainly some of the more technical applications, mostly in the results domain of what we're doing to connect results data and get that information from where it is to where it needs to be. Certainly a lot of focus on how we're using AI to enable it. So talks about federation of ontologies and how we're a piece of what's going on in the world. We want to connect the ontologies that we're creating with ontologies that are being created in other places, and so that all that work can be used to create data models and to enable solutions. And certainly, we talked about some of the infrastructure pieces. So today we're gonna poke in a few of those areas again, but I think more than anything, what we're going to focus on today is some of the operations, again, continuing with federation and collaboration, but really around connectivity. It's the element that we organized today's agenda towards, as we all were in violent agreement, is really trying to get to greater business value. That's what this is all about. So with that as the setup, I just this in this morning, and I was thinking a little bit about the conversation. It's a really simple graphic. Sorry, it's pretty basic, but hopefully it helps set the stage of what we're going to talk about today. And so what we've been doing as Allotrope as a community for a number of years is working out the formats and representations that thought made sense, and really focusing in the sort of middle tier of instrument results, focusing on various software, including CDSs and chromatography, so ubiquitous, and really getting implementations, the initial implementations in place where ASM format with the allotrope ontologies embedded within it become the input-output format, so an IO. So it's trying to represent what, it's an input format, and then it writes to instrument result ASMs, which then can go off to your solution of choice downstream. And so really what we're going to talk about today is something that Allotrope started last year in collaboration with Pistoia and some projects that we'll talk about, is to take that same basic idea and just say, well, why couldn't we do the same thing for methods and specifications? Because those are the procedures that generate the results. Will be fairly obvious and set the guardrails of what a good result is. And then as you continue up the chain, well, how about the processes? Because as we're all certainly in pharma business, we're trying to figure out where to go with let's say investigating an outcome in a process that we're running. It's really important to link the parameters of that process to the details of the results. So asking the question, well, why couldn't we use similar sort of ASM format for process recipes? And then, at the highest level, well, if you think about experiments, which generally are the combination of method specs, results, recipes, all put together in some sort of workflow with purpose in the beginning and some sort of business outcome in the end, why couldn't we string all those together as well and use this ASM framework, which is really underpinned by ontologies? Why couldn't we use that as a way to organize our data and start thinking about, well, maybe that's our data lake, essentially structured this way, and then the knowledge just feeds itself in there. So and that's what the representation at the bottom is for. So just maybe keep this in mind as you're hearing some of the presentations today, as we start embarking on some of these other domains, expanding beyond the instrument results. We talked about this. Again, every 6 months we get together, we try to do something really different. We talked about this was a good idea a year ago. We started spinning up some projects, and today we'll tell you about progress in some of those projects in these areas. And hopefully at the end, in the final, remember what slide I put in here? Yes, in the final ideation session, as we did yesterday, we can talk about, as we go through today's agenda, some examples of in additional domains using either ontologies and/or data models to expand structured content or standardized content in processes, methods, specifications, as I just outlined, leading towards the end of the day, maybe some conversation and also introducing an important new model that Allotrope is slating to put out this quarter called Connected Domains, which is that experimental model. Ideate together, well, what does this mean for our infrastructure? What could we be doing in terms of data products, data lakes, for ourselves using this as the framework of these semantic objects? What sort of additional projects could we spin up to answer any questions or have some of those important value proof points that we talked about at the end of the day yesterday? So it's really, hopefully today will be different than yesterday. It was a little more technical, a little more specific about it. Today is going to be absolutely more about applications that involve instrument results, but also start to intentionally connect them to the rest of the world. Okay, and then as promised, always like to begin with the end in mind. So here's what I think we're going to talk about at the end of the day, but we'll see how the day goes. So once we present all these applications and we show this connect domains framework that Wes will take us through, it's really to ask the question simply, but what do we do with it? You know, how does it impact your data strategy for what you're doing right now? If you're building a layered model where you're creating certain relationships and then layering semantic layers and continuing that sort of pattern. Could the world look different? Could it be simpler if you created semantic objects at the source and then had a semantic blueprint for? Could your data fabric look a lot simpler and serve a lot more use cases, have a lot less business bias built into it? Could it just, as we started saying in Allotrope, could you just have your data report the news, and then the business bent is how you query the data as opposed to manually constructing it and organizing it in a specific way for each problem. So anyway, that's what we'll hopefully talk about during the course of the day. So with that, I think we're roughly on schedule.